My name is Claire Thorne. I'm 33 years old. At my younger brother's engagement dinner in front of 200 guests, my father raised his glass and said that all his life he had only ever wished for a son, someone who could carry on the Thorne name and legacy. He wrapped an arm around my brother and called him his greatest pride, the future of the family, the fulfillment of every expectation. As for me, I wasn't even allowed to stand in the family photo. What no one knew was that over the past 7 years, I had built a business empire far beyond anything they could imagine. One that had already surpassed my father's asset management firm, and one that didn't rely on the Thorne name to stand on its own. In their eyes, I was nothing. But my father's business partner was about to reveal my true identity in front of everyone. And my mother, the woman who had regretted my gender since the day I was born, was about to be left speechless. But let me start from the beginning. Let me tell you about the family that raised me to be invisible. The Thorne family had old money, established wealth rooted in Boston's North Shore. Our 8-bedroom estate sat within a gated community, and the annual property tax alone could buy a standalone house in most other cities. My father, Harlan Thorne, was a managing partner at Thorne Capital, a boutique asset management firm overseeing $400 million. It wasn't a giant in the industry, but it held its ground through legacy connections, with deals often sealed over cigars and whiskey at the Boston Country Club. My mother, Evelyn, came from an old South Carolina family. After marrying into the Thornes, she devoted herself entirely to social climbing. She served as president of the local charity alliance and sat on the board of the Historical Preservation Society. Her life's work revolved around hosting charity galas and reinforcing the Thorne family's social standing. They had 2 children, me first, and then my brother Liam 4 years later. From the moment he was born, the rules of the household became clear. The son would inherit and build the family empire. The daughter would marry well and host elegant dinners. Liam joined my father's firm at 26 as vice president of client relations, earning a base salary of $300,000 plus bonuses. His job mostly involved golfing with clients and attending social events. He never touched real investment decisions. Yet my father constantly told people that Liam was the future of Thorne Capital. Meanwhile, my childhood bedroom was turned into my mother's craft room in 2020. Liam got into Brown University through legacy admissions. He majored in economics with mediocre grades, spent 2 years drifting in a second-tier investment bank, and ultimately landed his position at my father's firm thanks to a single phone call. He became the golden boy, adored and celebrated. I, on the other hand, earned my way into MIT for undergrad, then graduated at the top of my class from Wharton with an MBA. I joined Goldman Sachs in their real estate investment division, working 80-hour weeks, climbing from analyst to associate director in 4 years. I lived in a cramped shared apartment in Brooklyn, brought lunch from home every day, and saved up to $2 million. My family called me cheap. They had no idea I was building my foundation. At 26, I left Goldman and founded Aurora Capital, focusing on sustainable real estate redevelopment, transforming outdated industrial buildings into mixed-use spaces. On Thanksgiving 2020, I told my parents, excitedly, that I had completed my first acquisition, a $19 million deal. My father didn't even look up from carving the turkey. Not bad, Claire. But real estate? Isn't that just small-time developer work? Then he turned to praise Liam for landing a $1 million client. My mother smiled and chimed in, telling me to stop chasing business and start finding a husband. I was already 27 after all. Time wasn't waiting. That night, I tried 3 separate times to talk about my company. Each time, the conversation shifted back to Liam within a minute. That was the moment I stopped explaining myself. I built my empire in silence, and they never once asked. Fast forward to November 2025, a Saturday evening, 7 years later. I lived in a penthouse in Tribeca overlooking the Hudson River, a property I had paid for in full in 2022. That morning at 7:30, my CFO texted me our institutional investors had concerns about tenant concentration risk in our core project and needed additional documentation. Even on the day of my brother's engagement dinner, I worked until 2 p.m. Monday would be the most critical investment vote in our company's history, a $200 million acquisition of a prime Manhattan property. Failure wasn't an option. That evening, I drove to Boston. As the city skyline gave way to estates and private roads, my mind stayed fixed on Monday's meeting. I couldn't afford to be distracted by family drama. The engagement dinner was held at a North Shore club founded in 1888, with a 6-figure membership fee, an enclave for Boston's old elite. When my mother saw me, she simply scanned my outfit with disapproval and reminded me not to cause trouble during photos. I was seated at a table in the far corner of the ballroom, 40 feet from the main table, partially blocked by a decorative column, effectively invisible. When it was time for the family photo, The photographer asked if there were any other immediate family members. My mother said no without hesitation, as if I didn't exist. Then my father stood to give his speech. He raised his glass and declared Liam his only pride and legacy. The future of the Thorne family, the embodiment of all his hopes. My mother, visibly emotional, added that if they could only have one child, they would choose Liam. The room erupted in applause. No one looked at me. No one except Liam's fiancée, Stella Whitney. Stella was a senior vice president in Blackstone's real estate division. She stared at me, recognition dawning. Then she quickly pulled out her phone and searched my name. Claire Thorne, founder and CEO of Aurora Capital. Assets under management, over $550 million. Her face went pale. 9 months earlier, we had faced off in a project negotiation. She had even told her boss I was one of the most formidable founders in the industry. And yet Liam had told her I worked in some insignificant real estate consulting job. The information spread through the room like wildfire. My father's business partner, Richard, rushed to his side and whispered the truth. My father pulled out his phone, his hands shaking, and searched my name. His face drained of color. My mother grabbed the phone, denying it outright until Richard confirmed everything. She stormed toward me, furious, accusing me of humiliating the family. My father stood beside her, stumbling over his words, claiming they had never known. Calmly, I reminded them, I had told them in 2020. They just hadn't cared enough to listen. Liam arrived moments later, saw the screen and froze, shock and guilt written all over his face. We moved into a private lounge. My mother was still hysterical. My father tried to defend himself. And for the first time, I laid everything out: the $19 million first deal, the pandemic acquisitions, the growth to $550 million in assets, the pension funds we served for teachers and healthcare workers, our returns outperforming 90% of the industry. Stella stepped forward and confirmed my credibility, calling out my parents' blind favoritism and their complete disregard for me. My father finally asked what I wanted. I told him the truth. I wanted them to have cared 6 years ago, 4 years ago, even just a month ago. I wanted them to have asked about my life, to have seen me, to have let me stand in a single family photo, to not deny my existence in a room full of people. But 32 years of neglect couldn't be undone. I told them I had spent 7 years becoming someone they couldn't ignore, and they had still chosen not to see me. My father's firm was smaller than my company now. I had never relied on them, and I had already won. I walked out of the ballroom that night and drove back to Manhattan alone. I allowed myself a brief moment to feel everything I had suppressed for years, then I went back to work. On Monday, I secured the $200 million deal. The investors approved it unanimously. In that moment, I understood something clearly. I already had a family, the team that stood beside me. After that, Liam began therapy. He wrote to me every month, reflecting on his mistakes. Stella stood firmly on the side of fairness and helped rebuild a fragile connection between us. My parents, however, never truly apologized. They even tried to threaten me with the family trust, unaware that I had never needed their money or their approval. I declined their empty attempts at reconciliation. I maintained only limited contact with Liam, who had shown genuine remorse. Aurora Capital continued to grow, surpassing $700 million in assets. I appeared on the cover of leading industry publications. I met someone who understood what it meant to build something from nothing, someone who respected every part of me. Liam and Stella's wedding was set for the following summer. I agreed to attend, but on my own terms. This time, I wasn't the invisible daughter of the Thorne family. I was Claire Thorne, founder and CEO of Aurora Capital. And I finally understood, being unseen by family was never a reflection of my worth. I didn't need to wait to be recognized. The empire I built for myself, that was my freedom. I didn't need to shrink to fit anyone else's expectations. I was already enough.